I think it massively depends on how Chingalan do between now and the end of the season. Because if they don't win any tournaments, so out of the 6 tournaments left, if they don't win any, I think that could very much mean goodbye because of what's been happening over the last few weeks. Don't have a lot of faith in Augsburger, Chozas, Livac or Sanyo beating the likes of, well, most likely might be Lebron on the backhand next to someone else. I just think he's a better player than all the previous players. I think if Yanguas is in that match, he's a better player as well. And even Gogi Nieto, given his current level, I just think he's more reliable. So that's why I've gone for Spain.
I look at Paquito's current history and recent history with all the pairs. He's just like not really stuck around with anyone really that much. I mean, after the Nenno, it's kind of been bouncing from one place to another. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Paddle Pod, your weekly podcast covering professional paddle, presented by Hugo and Gons. On to episode 71, and as always, joined by my co-host Hugo here today. Hugo, it's great to have you on. How are you doing?
Hi everyone. Thanks, Gons. Yeah, buzzing as always, and obviously can't complain given that we just played together a few hours ago, and it was a big win. Well, it was an important win. I'd say we struggled a little bit at some points, but we won in straight sets, and yeah, good feelings on the court, and good to build that momentum into next week, where we'll obviously also be partaking in another kind of, Madrid Paddle Federation tournament, which are obviously the highest level you can play. So looking forward to it, given that our first couple of experiences were a bit tough.
Yeah, but the way we have to look at it is we've been getting better each week at these tournaments. So that means that we should carry on the momentum, and then next week it will be even better.
No, exactly. I totally agree. And at the end of the day, these are the matches you want to be playing because you want to be facing the toughest rivals possible to understand the areas of improvement that you need to, action in your own game and in our game as a pair. So looking forward to it. Hopefully we don't play one of the best pairs because, people probably don't care, but the pair that we played in the first round of our first tournament ended up winning the tournament. And then the second tournament that we played, the pair that beat us in the second round, they got to the final. They did lose, but again, obviously one of the best pairs in the tournament. So yeah, I'd say we've been slightly unlucky with the draws.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get a good break in the draws, but we should still be beating them in terms of, or at least, challenging them and stuff like that. But yeah, in any case, and not a lot of content out there, is there? No. I mean, we definitely do not want to go over again and I guess milk the Chingalan Coello Tapia cow, because I think we've done that, and we also kind of want to talk about different things with our audience. But what we thought about this episode is essentially some questions which we think are interesting, especially heading, we are towards the end of the season. So when we focus on next year, I mean, we obviously, Golden Tapia, Chingalan still fighting for the number 1 spot. Coello Tapia in an incredible winning streak. So, can anyone beat them? I mean, we kind of discussed that. There's obviously the World Cup. As we head into the end of the season, there's obviously probably going to be a lot of rumors about who's sticking around and pairs that are potentially splitting as well. So we just want to do very brief, quick fire kind of type questions, which we think are interesting. And now that we're ending the season, unfortunately, but maybe we'll start, Hugo, if that's all right with you. And
go for it.
The first one we wanted to discuss is, will anyone beat Golden Tapia between now and the end of the season?
It's a tough one. Many people would probably say no, they're definitely not going to lose given how well they've been playing. There's 6 tournaments left, if I'm not mistaken, including the tour finals, which is the last one. And I'm actually going to go with yes. I think someone will beat them. I think, we've discussed it over previous episodes and weeks. I think the number 1 spot's pretty much secured. So I think once it's mathematically secured, they're going to go into the tournaments feeling a little bit more relaxed. And that's going to give more options to the other pairs. Obviously, Chingalan have been their main nemesis throughout the whole of the season, and they've beaten Golden Tapia a lot. Not over the last few weeks, but yes, previously. So I think they could do it. And then there's also the chance that one of the other top pairs, whether it be Lebron and Nenno, Stupa Yanguas, who are getting better, Paquito and Cardona, who have been doing better than probably a lot of us were expecting them to do. I think those are probably the main contenders to beat them, and I do think it will happen at some point. Gons, what do you think?
It's also a yes for me. You highlighted a lot of the points. I think they're just probably going to lose the motivation, especially I think after the World Cup and after they kind of mathematically clinch that number one spot. I mean, I just don't see them being like super up for like all these matches, and there's actually like a run of tournaments quite hard towards the end of the year. So if I'm not mistaken, after the World Cup, there's like two P1s like straight back to back. Then there's maybe a week off, and then there's the major. Then after the major, there's the Milan P1, and then there's I think a couple of weeks off into the Master Finals. So I do think, for example, for the Master Finals, I do see them like motivated, and they'll have some rest. And it's the last tournament by then, probably be done with a number one. So good way to kind of finish off the year. But kind of those P1s in the middle there, I think that they'll definitely lose at some point. I mean, I just essentially can't see them winning all these tournaments in a row now and not losing. I mean, that would just be insane. So I will go with yes.
Yeah, I agree as I've shared. So maybe moving on to the next one. And obviously what we'd love is after the video, once it's posted, to get our thoughts, well, our viewers' thoughts, our followers' thoughts, because at the end of the day, we probably have our own opinion that could be, well, could very easily be different to what you guys think. So it'd be great to have a bit of interaction online as we've been having recently. So thank you very much for all your, well, all your love. It's much appreciated. But yeah, so second question, and one that I like particularly. Which pair do you think will be the first pair to win a tournament beyond Chingalan and Coello Tapia? I'm only including the tournaments that both Chingalan and Coello Tapia play because, for example, as we've actually discussed offline, Gons, this upcoming new Giza P2, which is going to take place in Egypt next week, Coello Tapia and Chingalan were originally going to be playing it, but actually they dropped out, well, right at the end. So they're both out. Lebron and Nenno won't be playing it. Paquito and Cardona won't be playing it. So yeah, I just want to only take into account tournaments that have the two big dogs. And maybe just a little addition. Do you think this will happen this season? As in, do you think any other pairs will win a tournament with both Chingotto and Galan and Coello Tapia this season?
It's a tough one. So I'm going to go with Lebron and Nenno. I think that they'll be kind of the first pair to win a tournament without Chingalan and Coello Tapia. I mean, they've always been quite close. I mean, they are kind of knocking thereabouts in the semi-finals. I thought that when they played Chingalan, they started off really well, but then kind of that moment where Lebron got a bit heated and there was a bit of a dramatic point, just kind of like derailed the whole match for them. But I think that they can definitely be good challengers. And they obviously are the pair that have won kind of the only tournament without Chingalan, essentially. So, and Coello Tapia. So I would put them kind of at the forefront. I think that they're kind of my favorites. But what I will say is I don't think that will happen this season.
Interesting. Okay. I'm going to go with a slightly different answer. I agree. I think Lebron and Nenno are the main contenders. So if I had to bet, I think they will be the first pair to win a tournament with both Golden Tapia and Chingalan partaking. But I actually do think it's going to happen this season. I've obviously shared it throughout the whole year. Well, I've shared my thoughts on the fact that during previous years, towards the end of the season, when the number one spot has been secured or when it's looked kind of secured, the top pairs kind of drop off a little bit. We've already seen Galán in particular dropping off a little bit in terms of his level. And I just think that when Golden Tapia mathematically secure the number one spot, as you've shared, well, just a few moments ago, I think they're going to lose a lot of motivation. I think Chingalan are not at their best right now. And I just think that's going to be a lot of food and breeding ground for the rest of the pairs. So I think it will take place this season. I do think it's going to happen in the next 6 tournaments before we finish the 2024 Premier Padel season. And I think it'll be Lebron and Nenno who do it for the first time.
Nice. So we'll definitely have to keep tabs in our little kind of predictions to see what happens. So next question, I guess, if Chingalan don't end the year as the number one pair, which obviously is looking quite unlikely, do you think they'll stick together for the start of the 2025 season?
Yeah, this is a hard one. I I've gone with yes, but I think it massively depends on how Chingalan do between now and the end of the season. Because if they don't win any tournaments, so out of the 6 tournaments left, if they don't win any, I think that could very much mean goodbye because of what's been happening over the last few weeks. And I think they'd probably think, hey, I mean, I'm probably talking about Galan in particular. I'd say, I think he'd probably think that it's game over for them as a pair in terms of being able to consistently challenge Coello and Tapia. They've had it this season in their hands, and I think over the last few weeks they've dropped off. And if they didn't win any tournaments between now and the end of 2024, he'd probably look elsewhere. Obviously, we've discussed the other options that he has. Maybe Yanguas, given how well he's been playing. Maybe a return with Lebron on the forehand side. I just think he's got other options. But if I had to bet, I do think they're going to win a tournament or two between now and the end of the season. And I think that's going to be enough for them to say, hey, let's give it another go and start 2025 together. At least that's my thinking right now. But I just feel that it would be pretty harsh for them to not give themselves the start of 2025 to see what happens. Because you never know. Coello and Tapia could suffer an injury, or Chingalan could start the season really well and Coello and Tapia could have a bad start and things could change completely. So that's my view. What do you think, Gons?
Yeah, I definitely think they'll stick together. Sorry, and I just think that we have to remember that really not long ago they were up like in head to head against Coello and Tapia, and the number one race was extremely close. I mean, it was really hot, and this really wasn't that long ago, right? Like some months ago. So I think that they've got to realize that, or they've got to look back at that moment and be like, hey, we were literally right there, and we haven't really had a full season or like pre-season at least to be able to really ramp things up and really train together. And then on top of that, I mean, Galan's had a bit of a drop off, so you kind of think like, okay, if I can get back to that level where I was at the beginning of the season, or maybe not necessarily that like incredible level, but somewhere close to it and maintain it, then I definitely think they have a chance. I think they also should look at Coello and Tapia and be like, you know, is Coello going to be able to sustain like this incredible level, or Tapia as well? I know that we've discussed like the thing with Coello and Tapia is probably when one drops off, the other is good. But we saw them that when Coello wasn't necessarily that good, that they definitely had their chances. They went after him and they won a lot of games like that. So I think that they have to, as you said, give themselves the opportunity to have a full preseason. And I'm banking on them finishing the year well, at least winning a couple of tournaments. That should give them like good confidence to start the year. I mean, it would be, in my opinion, incredibly hot-headed from Galan, because I'd assume that Galan would probably be the one kind of pulling the trigger on this. And I'd be like, it would be really surprising if he did. And at least he didn't say like, hey, let's just start the year and then obviously see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it'd be a very bold move given how close they've been to making the number one spot. And hey, who knows? I mean, they could. It's still mathematically possible. Right. And the tournaments left are big tournaments. A lot of P1s, a major, the tour finals, which are obviously worth more than any other tournament, twice as much as a major. So they're still in it. So I definitely agree. And I think, yeah, it would be very hot-headed and a big risk given what the other kind of options for Galán are. There's not that many that would, at least in my eyes, massively improve what he's currently getting from Chingotto, and looking at how well they've played together. So yeah, we're along the same lines on that. So maybe moving on and on to the next question, given that the World Cup is looming and I'm very much looking forward to it. Who do you think is going to win it?
Whew, probably one of the toughest questions I think that we're kind of answering. And I'm going to go with Spain, but I'm not confident at all in saying it. And there's a couple of reasons for it. I think first and foremost, the fact that Lebron is now confirmed to go as a sort of backhanded player this was confirmed by Spain's coach in an interview. I think it kind of means that we'll essentially have a completely new pair playing that has never kind of played before. At least like at the Spain level, because obviously Lebron is going to play. I don't see a chance that Lebron doesn't play. Definitely, in the final and everything. So that really throws me off because in a way, when I look at Argentina's side, I definitely see like their first two pairs are so easy for the first 2 points. Like, it's going to be Tapia and Chingotto, it's going to be Los Super Pibes. So the fact that Spain has Lebron on the left and then all the other mix, like what that opens up in terms of who's going to be playing like the second point. Because I'm fairly certain that Coello and Galan will be playing the first point. But then after that, it really opens up. I'm just not. It's a bit of a concern. And then the other point is just the vibes around the Spain team. I mean, when I look at the Argentinian side, I think they all get along incredibly well. I think they're really big together. And when I look at Spain, Lebron and Galan, Yang was in there, and with all the things that happened with Lebron as well. So I'm just not sure if like the vibes, Alex Ruiz, a player's gonna be thinking like, why is he here? So just the vibes don't really look that great to me, and that concerns me. But I do think Spain will win 2-1 at the end, mainly because I have a lot of faith in Coello and Galán winning the first point. I'd probably go the second point with Argentina. And then the third point, I think that Spain would have a better shot, essentially, because they probably have better players than what Argentina could put.
Well, it's such a tough question, isn't it? I am going to agree in terms of the outcome. I think Spain are going to win. I've gone with that after a lot of thinking, and mainly because I think their overall squad is better. I think the Argentina's top four pairs, obviously Tapia, Chingotto, Stupa, and Nenno, are sensational, and they can definitely win their matches. So I could see Argentina winning 2-0. But I just think that if it goes to a third match, and if the Nenno, Stupa, Chingo, and Tapia have all played, I don't have a lot of faith in Augsburger, Chozas, Livac, or Sanyo beating the likes of, well, most likely it might be Lebron on the backhand next to someone else. I just think he's a better player than all the previous players. I think if Yanguas is in that match, he's a better player as well. And even Goginieto, given his current level, I just think he's more reliable. So that's why I've gone for Spain. Now, I'd actually kind of disagree on how the matches are going to go. I think that if it's Tapia Chingo against Coello Galán, I have my doubts. I just think Tapia is so good. And I have a feeling that they might do it and they might beat Coello Galán. Now, I actually think in the second point, I don't think the Super Pibes are going to do that well. I think some of the other pairs could beat them. So it could very much go to a third point. I have a lot of faith in Spain if it happens. And I could also see Spain winning 2-0. So obviously I've gone through all the options, but I'm betting on Spain.
I think for me, I could see the 2-1 Spain or 2-0 Argentina.
Yeah, so you don't see 2-0 Spain?
Not really. I just don't have a lot of faith in that second point. And I do think that the Super Pibes could definitely pull it off.
Well, who knows? I mean, the thing is, it is true that Juanjo said Lebron's playing on the backhand. What happens if he suddenly goes rogue? Sure. And actually, the two first points involve, it could even be Lebron Paquito and Coello Galán, or Coello Paquito, Lebron Galán. I mean, I could even.
I mean, fair enough. If he's like playing mind games already and saying that Lebron's playing on the backhand and then pulls him kind of with a Galán, then fair enough. That'd be, I mean, tip my hat off.
It'd be a hell of a move, wouldn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So then moving on, we also want to talk about the Masters final. So Hugo, who do you think is going to win the Masters final?
It's so tough, isn't it? I've gone with Coello Tapia, just because I think that could be their last bit of motivation for the season. So, yeah, I just think they're the big favourites because they've been the best pair so far this year. And I've got to be honest, I was very tempted to go with Lebron and Nenno because I just think that last tournament of the season, Maybe Chingalan are feeling a bit down because they haven't managed to scrape the number one spot. Coello and Tapia have already secured it, and suddenly in come Lebron and Nenno, massive motivation to get off the mark and win a tournament with the two big dogs. I could just see it happening. I mean, we saw last season how Paquito and Chingotto, that hadn't won a tournament together, suddenly turn it round and beat Coello and Tapia in the semi-finals and Lebron Galán in the final. So I just have that vibe that it could happen. But yeah, if I had to bet, Coello Tapia.
Yeah, I'm gonna go as well with Coello Tapia. I think the motivation point is the main reason for me as well. I mean, they'll be rested as well by then because they have a decent break after the Milan P1. So it's a good way to finish off the year. It's also the first Masters final in kind of Premier Padel Tour. So good way to essentially close that number one spot. And it's always like a nice tournament as well in Spain as well. So, you know, they'll probably both have like their families alongside them and everything. But it's quite funny because obviously in the Masters final because it's the last tournament of the year and things are kind of decided, players are probably thinking more about their holidays and rest than the actual tournament itself. Over the last couple of years, we have seen some funny things happen. So who knows? I mean, you did mention Paquito and Chingotto kind of pulled one out the bag. And then in the previous year, I'm sure you remember as well, Chingotto and Nenno paired up and they actually managed to make the final.
Great point.
Against Galan and Lebron and take them to 3 sets. So, I mean, you just never know, really.
You really don't know. I remember that performance from Nenno and Chingo on the backhand. Yeah. So much fun to watch. They beat
Sanyo and Tapia. Yeah.
Unbelievable. I really did not expect that.
Exactly. So who knows? I mean, these tournaments, like this last tournament, Master Final, sometimes just, these kind of strange things happen.
Agreed. So maybe moving on to the last question. And obviously there's a lot to discuss in this question, but we wanted to analyze the top 10 pairs and just go with a quick stick or split, i.e., do we think this pair is going to continue at the start of 2025, or do we think they will have looked elsewhere and be playing with someone else? Maybe we just go with a quick stick or split across all the pairs, and then we delve into a bit of a discussion. Do you agree, Gons?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. Coello Tapia.
Stick.
Agreed. Chingalan.
Stick.
Agreed. Lebron Nenno.
Stick.
Agreed. I'm going with stick as well. Yanguas Stupa.
Stick.
I've gone for split.
Ooh, so interesting.
Chat a bit about that. Paquito Cardona.
Split.
Yeah, I've gone for split as well. Momo and Edu.
Split.
Yeah, I've gone for split as well. Also, this is in no particular order because some of the pairs are a bit mixed up beyond the top 5. Cocky and John.
Stick.
I've gone for split.
Oh, interesting.
Then Alex Ruiz and Alex Arroyo.
Split.
Yeah, if they're not splitting, I don't know what's going on in this world. Then Bergamini Garrido.
Split as well.
I've gone for split as well. And the last one, if I'm not mistaken, is Jorge Diestro and Sanyo Gutierrez, who have just teamed up for Sanyo to play on the backhand.
I mean, this is the clearest split you're ever going to get.
Agreed. Split. So maybe looking at some of the answers, we've both gone with stick with Lebron Nenno. Maybe you want to share some quick thoughts on that, Gons?
Yeah, I just think that they've obviously won one of the tournaments, so they do seem like they're kind of best of the rest. I mean, they are kind of reaching that semi-final threshold consistently. They did have that kind of one stinker game, I guess, against Chota-Sanasburger, if I'm not mistaken. And I do think that they'll finish the year off like decently. I think they'll want to give each other the chance of at least a full preseason. I don't think that Lebron, I think Lebron still wants to be in the backhand. I think eventually he'll switch to the forehand, but I think he kind of like wants to really see things out and really give himself a chance of be like, okay, can I compete and can I try to be a number one and win tournaments whilst being on the backhand? And it's just like if he decides to split, I just don't think like it just makes a lot of sense. And also taking into account the fact that they're probably sitting quite comfortable, like him and Nenno from a points perspective. I just think that unless the top like top dog split, I just don't see that they'll benefit really in any way. I think that they'll have to drop a couple of places backwards to then, I don't know, maybe invest in like some young players and stuff. But I just don't think they're at that stage at the moment where they have to look down for that young promise. I think that maybe down the line, if they really have exhausted all their options, that's basically my thinking.
Yeah, I just don't think I totally agree. I don't think they have much better options to pair up with, at least right now in this moment. And I think the points is the key, really. I mean, the gap between them and the fourth pair is it's a lot of points. It's five, six,
Yeah.
7,000 points, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember the exact amount. So they've just got a big buffer, and they're going to be very happy with it. So
They're sitting
I agree.
comfortably.
Yeah. So maybe Gons Yangwa Stupa, you went with stick. I wanted to get your kind of quick thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I do think that they've kind of been better as each tournament has gone on. I think they've got a really good chance now at the new Githa P2. The fact that none of the really any pair above them are listed, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah.
they have such a good chance of winning this tournament. If they win this tournament, I think they'll give them a huge boost. And I think that they'll kind of want to see the year out and then see like, you know, how things are at the beginning of the season as well. So very similar in the sense that unless some of the people at the top split, then I just potentially don't think it makes sense for a lot of them. I do think, for example, Yanguas could have some interesting options. For example, if Paquito decides to split, and I think that Paquito and Cardona will split, so Paquito could be an interesting going back with Garrido. I think we've discussed that as well. So I do think that Yanguas has interesting options, but on Stupa's side, I'm just not sure that he would have that many more options other than that we discussed it as well, Lebron switching or whatever. So from Stupa's side, I just don't think that would be really wanting to split from Yanguas. And I could see them, if they win this tournament, just kind of finishing it off and starting the year together.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see your point of view. I've just gone for split because I do think that once the season ends, a lot of these pairs are going to say, hey, have we actually managed to challenge the top two pairs? No. So should we look elsewhere to try and break that kind of dominance? And I agree. I don't think Stupa has that many better options, but I think Yanguas is playing much better than Stupa currently. And I think he can have other options to consider. I think him and Paquito could make a good partnership, given that Paquito's just a very safe backhand. He's so consistent, and I think Yanguas could add that little spice, and I think that pair could work well. At least you could see them challenge the top pairs in terms of when they go head to head against them, based on their kind of shot per shot. And I just also think that who knows? I mean, Yanguas looking at someone like going back with Garrido, as you said, I think that's something that he's definitely going to consider, given how well they played. But even someone like Coquinetto, he played with him back in the day, and you never know. I think that partnership worked well, particularly given that Coqui's been playing really, really well this season. So I just think he has a lot of options. And if this continues, well, basically his partnership with Stupa continues to be not kind of as dominant as we thought it would be, I just think he could be tempted to look elsewhere, particularly if a lot of pair changes happen. And it just feels like after the end of every season, it's total chaos. So that's why I've gone with it. But I definitely see your answer. I mean, we've both gone with split with Paquito and Cardona, and maybe a little bit surprising given that they've been doing better than what we expected them to be doing. So, Gons, maybe your quick thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's just when I look at Paquito's current history and recent history with all the pairs, he's just like not really stuck around with anyone really that much. I mean, after the Nenno, it's kind of been bouncing from one place to another. So, I mean, yeah, maybe they're not they're meeting expectations, but they're not like doing, let's say, anything special. I think that probably Paquito, from what you can see from the court and how emotional he is, I think that sometimes he doesn't necessarily, or he's not fond of Cardona's kind of, I guess, issues when points get really tight and things like missing unforced errors in tie breaks and stuff like that. I think that probably frustrates him a bit. And arguably, Paquito, I mean, he's kind of at the end of his career, so he probably wants to give himself his best shot. And realistically, Cardona, even though he's got a huge potential and he's a great player, can't really get him to that level yet. So I'm not sure. I mean, for example, could he tempt someone like Edu Alonso? I think that could be quite interesting. And I think Edu Alonso is going to be a huge kind of asset and target for really anyone at the top now. Or someone a bit more younger. I mean, Fran Guerrero as well, I think has been playing like really, really good. Maybe someone just a bit more consistent. And yeah, just when I look at Paquito and his recent, pairs and stuff, just no one's really been able, that he hasn't really stuck around with anyone. So I just don't really see this kind of working out either.
Yeah, I massively agree with your rationale. And we've gone for stick with Lebron Nenno, but imagine Lebron
Yeah.
suddenly decides to go back to the forehand or look elsewhere because they haven't managed to break the dominance of Chingalan and Coello Tapia. Dineno Paquito, I
I could
think
see
could be
that.
a great pair, and
Yeah.
I think it's going to happen again. Being honest, I
Yeah,
think
yeah, I don't disagree.
yeah, they get on so well, and it just works so well. So yeah, I just think he has a lot of options, as you rightly said, and also maybe even John Santh. I think that partnership has kind of been on the table and rumored to be something being considered a lot. And I could see John Santh and Paquito work well in the sense that they're very opposite. You have an aggressive forehand player in John Santh, given that he's a lefty. I do think that, well, given that they're both pretty hot headed, it could be a bit chaotic. But yeah, I just think Paquito has a lot of options. And if Cardona continues to struggle during the key points against the top pairs, Paquito's probably going to think I need a little boost to really make the most of my last years at the peak of my game, because I genuinely still think he's at the peak of his game. And yeah, maybe just two others that I'd like to highlight before we log off. Goki and John, I've gone for split, you've gone for stick. Shall I share my thoughts very quickly on the split?
Yeah, go for it.
I think I was very 50-50, but I think that they've hit their ceiling. I don't think they can play much better than what they've played, well, than the level that they've reached so far. I think they still struggle against the top pairs. They don't really beat Chingalan or Golden Tapia. And they've obviously beaten Lebron and Paquito this season when they were together. And I can see them challenging some of the other pairs above them, the Paquito Cardonas, even the Lebron Dinenos of the current tour. But I just think that they could be really attractive propositions for other top players. So John being an aggressive lefty, who knows? Paquito could be interested in pairing up with him. Stupa could be interested in pairing up with him. And even Lebron, if he continues on the backhand. So also, Goki's been doing so well, one of the best players and most improved players of the season in my eyes. So I think some of the top players could consider him as well. I think he could also at some point consider trying out on the forehand, given that he's a defensive genius. And if a big backhand player tempts him, he could be willing to change. So yeah, I just think that they have a lot of options, and I think a lot of pair changes always happen during the off season, and they're going to get a lot of calls. They've probably received a lot of calls already and said no, and I just don't think that they've really managed to kind of break into the consistency of being considered a top pair. So even if they are individually top players, I don't think they're currently considered as one of the main contenders of Chingalan and Golden Tapia. And I think that's a problem for them. But yeah, maybe Gons, do you want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, so I maybe see it in a different light because I agree with you. They definitely hit their ceiling, but I think their ceiling is quite comfortable. I think their ceiling is quite good. They're kind of sitting there at your sort of, I would say, arguably, even though by ranking, then they're like outside the top five, but I'd argue they're quite comfortably in that third tier of challengers, right? You've got the top two and then potentially Lebron, Dinero, Stupa, but after those, I really see Koki John there at the forefront of the rest of the pairs. So I think that despite the fact that maybe they don't challenge consistently Coello Tapia or Chingalan. They're always kind of there. If in P2s the top pairs don't participate, they're one of the favorites, and they did win that P2 in Bordeaux when the top pairs didn't play. So I just think that sometimes is the grass always greener on the other side? So that's my thinking with them. I mean, obviously, I don't think that they'll stick around forever, but they suit each other so well. I think they also seem like they get along really well. And for example, someone like John Santh doesn't seem like the easiest character to deal with on court. And I think Goki is able to deal with him really well and motivate him how he needs to motivate him. And Goki just brings that consistency that John Sands really needs, and especially for his game, given how risky and how offensive it is. So I really like it. They seem to really, really get along, and they're kind of sitting there comfortably, reaching quarterfinals. They might get Euro semi-final here and there, and if the top dogs aren't playing, a chance at winning a title. So I think that they'll stick, and they could be also quite good, let's say, winners of all this mix
chaos.
when it does happen. Yeah, chaos, because if they do stick, they've got obviously that history, and other pairs potentially mixing together, they're new and all of that, and they might not work. So it could be an asset for them. But I mean, I think at least for the 2025 season, I would say stick.
I just think that players are mega ambitious, and given how well they're both playing and how much they've improved, I just think they're probably going to look at their performances and their season and be like, has it been much better than last season's? I don't know. And
Well, they
do
won a
we?
title.
No, I know they won a title. I know
I
they won a
mean,
title, but they didn't have any of the other top pairs playing.
yeah, but when we look at all the tournaments, the other everything's been won by Chingalan and Coello Tapia. So I mean, it's not that bad.
No, it's not bad. I'm just trying to think who did they beat in that tournament? Did they beat any kind of? I'm just trying to think who they beat in that final. I mean, yeah, maybe we can discuss offline, but I just didn't. I know they won that tournament, but it did happen quite some time ago, and I just have a feeling that there's also a lot of young guns up and coming. There's also kind of Deyo trying to get back to his level, and he'll probably pick up the phone and try to call some top player, and they might consider him. So just think that given that there's so many options, and given that they could think that they've hit their ceiling, they might look elsewhere. I'm not saying that it might be the right decision, but I just think that if Paquito, for example, called John Santh, I think he'd say
Yeah,
yes.
probably.
I wanna make the move, but I totally agree. I mean, I think they're very established, and I think they're a massively dangerous pair for any pairs beyond Chingalan and Coello Tapia. I mean, I could see them beating Lebron Nenno. I could see them beating Paquito Cardona. I could see them beating Stupa Yanguas. It's just whether they're happy sitting there. I don't know about that.
Yeah, very true. And is there a last pair that you want to maybe discuss before we quickly jump off?
To be honest, I'm pretty happy, but we both said split with Edu and Momo. And I
Mm.
just think that given how well they've been playing, I'd like to get your view and your understand your opinion, which is obviously the same as
Yeah.
mine.
Well, I think that for next year, I think Edu is going to be like one of the main targeted players. And I think that for himself, I could really see him wanting to take that next step. And realistically, how he's playing with Momo right now is probably their ceiling, and he's never really going to reach the top if he with Momo. So I just think that he's a really attractive kind of player for anyone at the top, and I feel like he's going to be really ambitious and want to essentially take that same step that probably Yanguas has taken, and really be in that conversation with the Coello Tapias of the world, Chingalan, etc.
Yeah, I massively agree. And also, I'm thinking about what kind of prospects there are out there. And I think, I don't know why, but I can really see John Santh and Momo as a pair as well. I think they'd work well. They're very opposite players. You've got the defensive backhand, the attacking forehand. And I think Momo and Edu, even though they've done really well, they are too similar on the court. They both are unbelievably good defensively, but they struggle to win points quickly. So even the wins that they've had, they're just absolute battles. And I think they probably want a player next to, each other that is a bit more opposite and a bit more attacking, and kind of gives them the capacity to not have to generate that many winners, because I think they're both more comfortable not having to do that.
Yeah, 100%. So, anyways, it's been really interesting, and we would love to hear our fans' opinions on these. Who you guys think are going to split, or who do you think are going to stick out of the top 10 pairs? I'm sure that we'll start to hear about this really soon as kind of the roulette starts going around. But nonetheless, I mean, Hugh, it's been a great episode, and we do have a tournament next week, and because of the top pairs not being there, we'll see a new winner, which will be also quite refreshing and quite nice. So yeah, make sure that you do check that out. And Hugo, it's been a pleasure as always.
Cheers, guys. Have a great week.